good morning and welcome to yet another program of Disaster and You, a program of the Office of Disaster Management of the Commonwealth of Dominica. I'm Carlisle JnoBaptiste, Communications Officer at the Office of Disaster Management, and of course, I'm with you for yet another Tuesday for yet another program. With me today is the Senior Met Officer, Mr. Marshall Alexander. Mr. Marshall Alexander, I need to get that name right. Mr. Marshall Alexander, Senior Met Officer. And of course, we'll be taking a look at the season thus far, an overview of the season. How has it been? We know that the season, the hurricane season that is, comes to an end on the 30th of November. And we will be taking a look at that. But I need to also remind you that there's a public speaking competition in Disaster Risk Management 2025 that should have been held this week Friday, but it has been pushed back to November 17th, 2025. A number of schools will be participating, and the venue is the Office of Disaster Management Conference Room, and the time is 10 a.m. The topics: disaster preparedness, explain how communities can prepare before a disaster strikes, response strategies, describe actions to take during a disaster to reduce risk and save lives, and recovery and mitigation, present ways to recover after a disaster and prevent or lessen future impacts. We've already extended an invitation to all the media houses in Dominica to ensure that they are part of that public speaking competition. I will send you a reminder again, and that competition will take place on Monday, 17th November 2025, the Office of Disaster Management Conference Room at Jimit, 10 a.m. in Dominica. I also want to big up all the persons who has met me and says to me that the program has been very, very informative, and keep listening to the program, and who have welcomed the program over the past few months that I've been hosting the program. Thank you so very much. Your listenership ensures that I do what I have to do. And I also want to say thank you to the Office of Disaster Management for giving me the opportunity to bring out the information. Now, Marshall Alexander, good morning to you, my brother.
Yes, good morning to you, Carlisle.
Yes.
And good morning to all the listeners of DBS Radio. And also, I'd like to say good morning to all the staff of the Met Service, including the staff of the Ministry of National Security and Legal Affairs, to mention the Minister of National Security and the Permanent Secretary.
They are always listening. The entire staff are always listening. I know the staff at the Office of Disaster Management who are doing a fantastic job. They are always in tune. And of course, Joanne Coppell, who will be the one in charge of the public speaking competition in Disaster Risk Management Voices of Resilience. Let me say a hearty good morning to you, and of course to Wendy and all the other staff, Janelle, and all the other staff of the Office of Disaster Management, wherever you are. We welcome you, and we continue to say thank you to you for doing a fantastic job. Now, season overview and forecast. How has the season been thus far, Marshall?
Well, just to say it's not over yet.
It's not over
yet. As I mentioned earlier, it would have been more fitting to do that analysis after the season is over, which is on the 30th of November officially. Mm-hmm. However, we can start from the beginning, looking at the outlook or the predictions that were made in the earlier part of the season and also in the middle part of the season.
Yes.
Because there was a first prediction done in May, and the prediction was for an above normal season, and there was a 60% chance of an above normal season. However, the second prediction done in August also leaned towards an above normal season. However, the percentage was decreased from 60 to 50%, and just to see that the official season runs from the 1st of June to the 30th of November, and these predictions are done prior to the start of the Atlantic season. And some of the key factors driving the season was the warmer than average sea surface temperatures, weak wind shear, and that is the direction and speed of winds, the difference in direction and speed of winds from the surface to the upper levels, and also an active West African monsoon. So these were some of the drivers given for that prediction. And for Dominica, early planning was essential.
Essential, yes, I was going to say that, yes.
And there was the Hurricane Awareness Week that was launched under the theme Strengthening Communities, Securing Tomorrow, Act Early and Stay Ready.
Yes, and of course, and we also did our outreach programs. I know that from the Office of Disaster Management, we went to various hamlets, to various communities. We met with the fisher folks, and we had meetings with them, trying to ensure that they were aware of what is to come and sort of sensitizing them. I know we went to Portsmouth, we went to Vegas, we went to Soufrière, Scotshead, Point Michel. We also went to Newtown area, and we met with the fisher folks, and we had various outreach programs. So to ensure that persons were ready, because if you are not ready, Marshall, it makes absolutely no sense.
That's right. So you have to be ready with the right information, timely as well.
Yes.
But as it relates to Dominica, to date, there have been no direct tropical cyclone landfall on Dominica. That means we've not had any direct hit by hurricane or storm so far. Nevertheless, Dominica has experienced indirect effects, and that is tropical waves, troughs, and we did have the impacts of flooding, gusty winds, landslides, and rough seas. So we did have some indirect impacts experienced during the season.
During the season, yes.
Yeah. And just to mention, as of October to early November, we've had so far approximately 13 named storms, and of which 4 became major hurricanes in the Atlantic Basin. So we had Hurricane Erin, which became a Category 5 hurricane. Then we had Hurricane Gabrielle, which became a Category 4. And this was another major hurricane. So a major hurricane would be from Categories 3 and above. We also have Hurricane Humberto, which also reached Category 5. And lastly, but I wish I could say lastly.
You wish you could say lastly, but it's not. It's almost.
Because the season is
almost,
not yet over,
yes.
but I would say the last one is Hurricane Melissa, which became a Category 5 hurricane. And it was a very intense hurricane, and it moved through Jamaica. So we just want to remember the people of Jamaica and wish them a speedy recovery, because we've been in that situation before.
Yes, and as you speak about that, Dominica Electricity Services, they've sent a team of 5 persons out to Jamaica to assist in the restoration of electricity in Jamaica. And we know that when we were struck a few years ago by Hurricane Maria, we also had persons from outside, and we want to say kudos to Domlec, and of course we want to wish the Domlec team well as they work in Jamaica for the next month to assist the people of Jamaica. We also, Marshall, heard from the Prime Minister, who indicated that Dominica will be sending some relief supplies to Jamaica, and of course very soon that will be done. Of course it has to be done, of course, in conjunction with SIDEMA and of course the Office of Disaster Management. So we in Dominica, we are also playing our part, because we also got assistance from Jamaica when we were struck by Hurricane Maria, and we as a Dominican people, a loving people, we are also playing our part in assisting the people of Jamaica.
Yes, definitely, Carlisle. But I must say that despite the high numbers, because we had 13 named storms, and as I mentioned earlier, there was a prediction for an above normal season, and the prediction was for 13 to 19 named storms in the first instance. That was in May, and then it went to 13 to 18 named storms. So as you can see here, we're at the bottom. So we had 13. So despite the high numbers, we can see that most of the storms remain out in the open waters of the Atlantic and did not pose any direct threat to us in Dominica.
What would have caused that, though, quickly?
Well, it's based on what is called the steering flow of the storm, and that is due to the presence of a high pressure system which usually steers the storm, and there is also another effect called beta drift, which would steer the storm towards the north. And again, based on the time of the year, there's a climatology of formation of storms, where we have towards the beginning of the season, we'd have storms forming in the Gulf, and then you have it moving towards the Atlantic as the season goes towards the peak. Yeah. But we did see a lull or cessation or a pause in activity during the peak season.
Okay.
And that was from about somewhere around from the 29th of August to around the 19th of September. And in the peak of the season, climatologically, is around the 9th of September. That is when you'll have most of the strong hurricanes developing around the early week or the first to second week of September.
When we were going to school, people used to say June too soon, August, September, remember October all over. But that is no longer the case, though.
Well, things have been changing, as you know, we've been speaking about climate change, and we are seeing a change in the pattern. For instance, we are seeing more high category hurricanes being developed, more category 5 hurricanes being developed or developing in the past. I mean, in the recent past, and we have had about 3 category 5s this time around.
That is unprecedented.
Well, it's an increase. It's an increase. Definitely, it's an increase. And there's something called accumulated cyclone energy, and right now it is relatively high, because it's a calculation of the energy of a storm, and it would be based on the maximum sustained winds, the square of the maximum sustained winds of each storm, and divide that by 10,000, and then you come up with a value. But the average for the ACE would be around 122 to 126, and right now the ACE is about 132.9. So that is above the average. So that just tells you that the activity or the energy in the Atlantic has been relatively high because of the category 5 hurricanes that has been developing.
Okay, so you have some more information for us as we go going along. As I said, again, we just want to remind you that this is the program Disaster on and You on DBS Radio. It's produced every Tuesday, and I'm the one always on Tuesdays from 9:30 to 10:30 hosting that program. Again, we want to remind you that there's a public speaking competition in Disaster Risk Management 2025, Voices for Resilience. It's slated for November 17th, 2025. The venue is the Office of Disaster Management Conference Room. The time is 10 a.m. Again, we are extending a public invitation to all the media houses on island to find themselves there. I will again remind you of that. Find yourselves there, because the schools will be the one doing the debating competition. So DBS Radio and the various radio stations, please take note of that. And the topics for discussions will be disaster preparedness, explain how communities can prepare before a disaster strikes, response strategies, describe activities to take during a disaster to reduce risk and save lives, and 3, recovery and mitigation, present ways to recover after a disaster and prevent or lessen future impacts. Our students from the various schools will be the one taking part in that, and of course, we want to ensure that, that is broadcast and the students get the necessary leverage as it relates to airplay. The Honorable Minister will be in attendance, so we also want to ensure that all persons, those who can make it, come and give support to the students. Yes, Marshall?
Yeah, just to say that sometimes when you hear a prediction for an above normal season, you would expect the season to start off early. But in recent times, I mean from last year, I think the season started off with the first named storm somewhere around the 19th of June. And this time around, we had the first named storm, which was Andrea, started off on somewhere on the 23rd of June. That was rather a late season start, for an active season. And we had, I think, we also had a late start sometime in 2014 when we had a storm develop, the first storm develop on the 1st of July. So it's not really unusual per se, but when you hear of an active season, you would expect to see an early start to the season, and then you would expect to see peak activity taking place as climatologically done, which would be in beginning of September or so.
But every year, for the last few years, we always hear we're going to have an active hurricane season. it continues, and that seems to be the trend. Is that because of the change in weather pattern?
Well, Kalai, I can tell you that over the past few years, we've been hearing of record-breaking temperatures.
Yeah.
You know, every year we have a record-breaking temperature, and this is one of the fuels that is necessary for the development or for the formation of tropical cyclones. When I say tropical cyclones, I mean hurricanes and storms. You know, and if you have those increasing temperatures, especially in sea surface temperatures, then definitely you would have an increase in tropical cyclone activity or hurricane or storm activity in the Atlantic basin.
And of course, during that time, that becomes your more busier season for your department.
Yes, indeed.
Because then you have to be tracking the storms as they move and as they traverse to ensure that you give the Dominican public the relevant information, the information on time, and to give the early warnings as we progress.
Yes, definitely. I mean, we are that's part of our job, and our job is not complete until we have the response of the public, because you can be giving information to the public, but they are not responding. But response is key. You know, that completes the cycle. You know, we give the information, correct information, timely information. Now the onus is on the public to take responsibility and respond to the warnings and to the advisories that are issued, you know, by taking the necessary action to save lives and property.
And I know also that even your department, you're on Facebook, you're on the various media outlets, and you give the daily weather reports, the daily weather forecasts. And we always ask people to listen to that. You know, someone was asking me, why do I say that the official information comes from the Met Office? Maybe you are the one best suited to tell the people that, because I always say to them, look, you will hear things out there, but the official information as it pertains to Dominica, you need to listen to the Met Office, because they are the official mouthpiece, if you want to put it that way, the official source of information, right?
As it relates to Dominica.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's our mandate. Our mandate is to provide information to the Dominican public, because anybody can just go to Facebook and put out any information they want, you know, and sometimes there are no consequences, but people tend to create sometimes they create chaos
and anxiety
by putting false information out, you know, and then we at the Met Service have to come and try to, you know, to solve the problem, you know, and try to allay the fears of somebody or the members of the public who might be or might have received wrong information somewhere, you know. And sometimes I personally have received information and it was news to me, you know, like somebody might send me something and say me, Marshall, is that true? And I say, but where did you get that from? You know, I hope you didn't share that. You know,
I know I called you some time ago, and I said to you that a media practitioner called me and said to me that look, a lot of rain and what are we saying? So I'm saying to them, we have nothing pending, and the person said, you know, something is happening, call Marshall. And when I spoke with you, you said, Carlisle, you are very right. There's absolutely nothing to be worried about. So people really go out there and spreading information. And again, we need to advise people that the official information as it pertains to Dominica comes from the Met Office, and it is essential, it is important, it is paramount that you listen and you get that information from the Met Office.
Yes, definitely. We work with the National Hurricane Center, and they are responsible for issuing information on tropical cyclones, that would be hurricanes and storms. But we have to tailor that information to Dominica, because the National Hurricane Center information would be general, but in terms of what we would receive in Dominica in terms of rainfall, sustained winds, and so on, it would be our responsibility as a Met Service to tailor that information to suit the Dominican public or the Dominica on a whole.
You also spoke, I think you spoke on the impact of Dominica, what has happened thus far.
Oh, well, we did have some impacts. I think ODM should be well aware of that in terms of flooding, which occurred sometime in June. We had some swells, which occurred in August, and that was as a result of Hurricane Erin, which passed to the north of us. And normally when those systems pass to the north and even to the south of us as well, we would even though we do not get a direct hit, then we would experience the impact of rough seas and so on. and then we had some flooding in September, and that was on the afternoon in Roseau as well.
Yes, and we had Jerry, yes.
Right, and then we had flooding in Pichelin, in the Roseau River, Loubier, etc. And then we had tropical storm Jerry, which moved through our area on the 9th of October recently, and we had some flooding in Pichelin, and we also had some high seas we experienced during that time. And we had Melissa, which moved through. It moved through our area as a tropical wave before it developed into a hurricane and went on to impact Jamaica.
I want to ask that question. What causes the cyclones to develop so rapidly? For example, Melissa moved from a category 1 quickly into a category 5, and just like Maria, what are the causes that precipitates those cyclones to develop so rapidly?
Well, there is a process called rapid intensification, and that is based on the conditions, the favorable conditions or the ideal conditions for rapid intensification. If a system moves over an area of warm water or extremely warm water, then it would develop rapidly, and also there would be a low wind shear, which means that these conditions would be ideal for development. High sea surface temperatures, low wind shear, and lack of friction, then we'll have conditions for rapid intensification, and then you'll have a sudden blow up or sudden development of that system.
That's a good public education. I hope our many listeners are taking note of that, because they always say to me, there's this lady in Matnik that I met, and she said to me, on Tuesdays I always listen to that program. I think, and Mary, let me say good morning to you, and Mama up in Point Michel in Hollywood, she says she always listens to the program, and to our many other listeners who meet me on a daily basis. Adriana Henderson from Granby, she met me also, and she says that the information that we give out has always been very timely, and they really, on a Tuesday, they look forward to this information. So there are times that we are not able to have the program, but whenever we ensure that we bring people with the knowledge and the information so that we can educate the public, and we're really happy that the general public are in tune to the radio station and are taking on the information. Yes, you wanted to speak about, I guess, the floods, etc.
Well, I just wanted to mention that there is a balance that's supposed to be happening in the atmosphere, because the tropics is always getting hot, and then you have the poles getting cold, right? And one of the reasons for the development of storms is to balance the Earth's energy budget. Sometimes I tell people, if as a meteorologist, if I do not see any storms developing, that would be of concern to me. The only thing is that we do not want storms to make landfall, but storms are necessary, because what they do is that they remove the heat from the tropics and bring it up to the poles and balancing the Earth's energy budget. Okay, so if there's a period where there are no storms being formed, then suddenly you'd find that there's a major storm forming to remove most of the heat energy from the tropics and bring it up to the poles. So that is one of the key reasons behind the formation of tropical storms, to balance the Earth's energy budget. So, but we want those storms to remain over the open water.
Over the open water
of the Atlantic.
Of the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's touch on in terms of when do you decide there's a severe storm, and when do you issue flood watches, flood warnings, etc., etc.?
Well, just to go back to Jerry.
Yes.
I remember when Jerry was approaching, we had a
simulcast,
and we had that same program.
Yes.
Right. So we had a simulcast, and we were advising people that we do not expect to experience the impact of a storm.
Yes.
However, our concern was for rainfall.
That is correct.
Okay?
Yes.
And it was as far as we had tropical storm warnings being issued from Guadeloupe northward, and Dominica was only placed under a flood watch during that time, because our concern was for rainfall.
Yes.
And we were not expecting, because there was a very low probability of experiencing tropical storm force winds. So as a result of that, we did not issue any tropical. We did not have a reason
To issue, yes.
to issue any tropical storm watch or warning at that time, because it's generally based on wind speeds probability. Okay, so we did have a simulcast
Simulcast, yes.
together with the Office of Disaster Management. Now, as it relates to flood watches and warnings, flood watches are issued when flooding is possible. That's for a watch. Flooding is possible but we have to watch those words. Possible.
It's possible, yes.
Right?
Operative
Possible
word.
is the operative word in that one, and there's a flood warning, which means that flooding is expected. Okay, so the difference is possible and expected. It's possible will tell you that people in areas prone to flooding, landslides, falling rocks, be on alert, because flooding is possible, And with the warning, there would be a greater certainty where you would say that flooding can be expected or is expected to occur. All right, so we did issue a number of flood watches and warnings over the season so far. We don't know what is to come, so it's a matter of remaining prepared, and just to say again that we are still in the hurricane season, and that weather systems can affect us even outside of the hurricane season.
That is why I wanted to ask that question.
And we've had those experiences in the past. So we always have to maintain our guard, and remain in preparation mode, no matter what, whether we are in the hurricane season or outside of the hurricane season.
Because I remember we had this December trough a few years ago. It just came suddenly.
Well, you see, troughs are relatively difficult to predict per se, because sometimes the models do not pick them up because of how fast they move, and sometimes our local experience might be even better by monitoring using radar and satellite instead of looking at models, because when it comes to a trough, it would be easier to look at a satellite imagery and look at how the system is moving or how the trough is moving, because there are two parts to the trough. There's the sinking part and there's the rising part. If you are below the rising part, then you would have blow-ups of thunderstorms. You would not actually see the clouds or the rain coming towards you. You would just have a blow-up, and then it would just stay there for a long time and produce a lot of flooding and gusty winds and even thunderstorms. So that's the difference between a trough and a wave. With a wave, it's easier to predict because you would actually see the area of convection or cloudiness or rainfall moving from east to west, approaching the area, and then you'd be able to make a prediction and say, look, is that you expect to see flooding, you expect rainfall, etc. But with a trough, it is more difficult, because you just have a trough might just shift. It might shift from east to west, and then we might end up underneath the rising side, and then you'd have blow-ups of clouds because the moisture is always available, and then you have the upward motion, and then you have the condensation taking place, and then you have maybe lack of wind shear, and then you have the system blowing up, and you have rain forming, and then you have downpours or showers and causing flooding. So that's the difference with a trough and a tropical wave. So a trough is something you have to be, your eyes have to be really open and monitoring satellite and radar to be able to predict or to know what's happening or what's expected to happen with a trough.
I want to ask that question. There are times, I'm from the community of Point Michel. There's no rain, absolutely no rain in Point Michel. But down Portsmouth and Marigot, it's raining cats and dogs, and sometimes the airport has to close. What generally would be the cause of that?
Well, that could be there could be a number of reasons for that. I mean, that's what sometimes we call that scattered showers, but sometimes the conditions, or maybe depends on the area that the instability might be affecting or might affect, because sometimes you could have a system pushing clouds from at a certain area, but not to the south. It could be to the north and not to the south, and then again, sometimes you also have blow-ups in the afternoon. The day would start off good, and then during the afternoon you might have blow-ups of showers and thunderstorms, and that would be as a result of enhancement due to what we call daytime heating, because when you have the heating of the surface, then you have the rising of air, and then you have condensation taking place, and then you have the formation of clouds or thunderstorm clouds, and then you have downpours. All right, so with the presence of clouds or rainfall in Portsmouth area and none in Roseau, would all depends on the area of that system where you would have the strongest instability. So you'd have maybe showers in Portsmouth or showers in Roseau and no showers in Portsmouth. And it could be enhanced again by daytime heating. Yeah.
Okay, if you're just joining us, we want to remind you again that this is Disaster and You, a program of the Office of Disaster Management. We also want to remind you again of the public speaking competition in Disaster Risk Management 2025, Voices of Resilience, and that is to take place on November 17th, 2025. The venue is the Office of Disaster Management Conference Room at 10 a.m. Again, an open invitation for the media to find themselves there to cover that function. The topics: disaster preparedness, explain how communities can prepare before a disaster strikes, response strategies, describe actions to be taken during a disaster to reduce risk and save lives, recovery and mitigation, present ways to recover after disaster and prevent or lessen future impacts. With me in the studios of DBS Radio is the Senior Met Officer, Mr. Marshall Alexander. We will take a break and we will come right back to continue our discussions.
I begging you live a free, Dominica lifestyle for man, woman and child. I begging you live a free, Dominica lifestyle for man, woman and child. For when disaster strikes, yeah. For when disaster strikes, oh, yeah. I begging you.
Thank you very much. Welcome back. As I said, we are in the studios of DBS Radio, and we have this program, Disaster and You, every Tuesdays on DBS Radio from 9:30 to 10:30. We are still in the hurricane season. If you are wondering, yes, we're still in the hurricane season, and the season officially closes on November 30th. And so we want to remind you that your emergency kit is still very essential. Your checklist, ensure that you have the various things that you ought to have, important documents, your insurance documents, your birth, marriage, and baptismal certificates, etc., travel documents, passports, and those necessities, that is, other necessities would include your toolbox, fire extinguishers, whistle, etc., and your basic supplies, your drinking water, and canned meat, fish, fruit, and or vegetables, bread in moist-proof packaging, etc. So remember also that you need to be prepared, be safe, and of course you could also visit the website of the Office of Disaster Management at www.odm.gov, G-O-V, that is, .dm, also odm at dominica.gov.dm. We also have a Facebook page at facebook.com/ODMD-Dominica1. And our telephone numbers are 767-266-4412 and 266-4477. And of course, as we continue to say, we work in conjunction with the Met Office of Dominica, and of course we also work in conjunction with the police and the fire officials. So we have with us, as I said earlier, the Senior Met Officer, Mr. Marshall Alexander, who is discussing with us, what has happened thus far as we come to an end to the hurricane season. And we are only hoping and praying that nothing else will come our way. as we come to the end of the hurricane season. Right, Marshall?
Well, definitely, Carlisle, we have to hope and pray. Well, I mean, definitely in the past we have been preaching that based on what has been going on, with the climate and the temperatures and so on, that we are expecting to see an increase in the frequency and intensity of tropical cyclones or of hurricanes, in the coming years, because of the high temperatures that we've been seeing, and as I mentioned earlier, that we've been seeing record-breaking temperatures annually. This year we'll have a record, next year we'll have another record, So it's record-breaking record.
Record-breaking records, yes.
So we have to be mindful of that, and continue to take those things seriously by making our yearly or annual preparations, as it relates to hurricanes. And not only hurricanes, there are other hazards that we have to prepare for, and Dominica, because of the local vulnerabilities of Dominica, we have our mountainous terrains, we have multiple small catchment areas, we have rural communities, and most of our population is along the coastal areas. So, we have community assets, and we have to see that preparedness is very essential, even outside of the hurricane season, as I mentioned.
And I want to say kudos to your department for the work that you've done thus far. Also, the kudos to the Office of Disaster Management, and the way the staff has been working ceaselessly and tirelessly to bring out the information, reaching out to the communities before time things would be happening, and you would just not know, or you would not have the essential information. But your department, as I said, working in conjunction with the Office of Disaster Management, with the police, the fire officials, etc., have been bringing out the necessary information on a timely manner to ensure that the public is educated. Because I remember we went down to Maho, and you also did a presentation there. We went to other various hamlets where you did presentation with the fisher folks.
That's right.
And sometimes when we give the fisher folks the information, they take their own cool time to do certain things. When you say to them that, look, ensure that your boats are secured, and they wonder why we say that. But we say that to ensure that we protect you, we protect life, and we protect property. I suspect we have a caller on the line who is trying to reach us. Do we have a caller? No, I thought we had a call on the line who wanted to share some information with us.
One thing, I always say that it's always better to be safe than to be sorry. So when you get information, you take the necessary action, and just to continue to advise the public to continue to monitor for official updates from the Dominica Met Service.
Hold that for a little, because I think we have a call on the line. Caller, good morning. Welcome to Disaster New.
Peace be unto you and yours, and thank you, blessed and spiritual. Terrific Tuesday to you, your guests, the staff, and to all listeners. A very good program. I'm very interested, and I like to make my little 2 cents because Dominica is my second home.
Yes.
And there's something that you all should mention about, and that is dumping, illegal dumping and littering. I come to Dominica, and I would see people throwing bottles through windows, throwing Kentucky boxes, and all those things through the window. And something happened then, and it's not the water blame, the ministries. When it is some of their fault. Find some place or take home your garbage and put it in your garbage, your garbage bin. So that's another thing: illegal dumping and indiscriminate dumping. Whenever I come across the bridge, I would think, it hurt my heart to see how the river, one time used to get the river looking so nice. Now you got trees growing in the river because, and you see stuff coming in and going right out to the sea. And then certain places there, when you come across the bridge itself, opposite the taxi stand, there's people dumping stuff at the end of the side of the river, and that is not nice. I'm not saying that my country perfect, but I love Dominica, and it's a place I love to come and enjoy, and I would like to see, the best for it. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Gail. As Hazari would say, honorary Dominican. Yes, and very interesting because some time ago I had Florian Mitchell from the Solid Waste Management Department, and he also spoke about the indiscriminate dumping, because when you dump things here, there, everywhere, it blocks drains and it causes a lot of problems, because when the drains are blocked and we have a lot of rain, that too is a serious problem, Marshall.
Yeah, because I think during the earlier part of the season, I heard the minister mention about people taking personal responsibility, in terms of...
You have to hold that thought because we seem to have an next caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to Disaster New.
Good morning to members and members. Fireman touching base. Good morning to Rivernick and also to the world.
Yes, Fireman.
Now, I have two little problem and to ask two little question a little bit. No, we have a problem sometimes we have hurricanes or certain things happening. It's how people are living in certain areas and it's the government or whosoever in charge to tell and get it from there. They will have a problem. So I want to make sure they put something in place that anytime this kind of thing happening, and literally people come out from there, no matter whosoever they be, they have to come out from there. Now my next question. Now, it's a hurricane that passed in Jamaica lately, right?
Yes, Hurricane Melissa.
Thank you. Because I remember Hurricane David passing my country. I was a little boy. I grew up like that happened. I was in St. Martin when Hurricane Oma passed. I hear a whole heap of different thing. I see a different thing. What I find now, the hurricane in Jamaica stay how many days? Right? In Jamaica. I know hurricane or the weather, whatsoever, stay how many days in Jamaica. And after that, here come a big hurricane with no lightning, as my Rasta bedroom tell me. With no lightning, with no thunder, nothing. So I trying to find out now to myself, do this kind of thing that is nature, or that is God work, or that is man work, or something? As a weather person, I don't know about weather, what I do. When I see things, I know what happens, man, I can think and analyze for myself. So I trying to find out from you really and truly, if this type of things they call in hurricane whatsoever, because they man has a whole heap of them and they have different power, I know what's happening there. So if that is God creation, or if it's nature, or man doing that, but I realize to myself that has something to do with mankind. Up and running, fireman running, bless up, I'm listening, give thanks.
Thanks, Fireman. Marshall, that is one for you to probably answer, Fireman, because some people are asking these questions.
Everybody have their own personal opinions about things, but what I can say is that hurricanes, as far as my understanding, is a natural phenomenon based on my studies, I can say that it's a natural phenomenon, and I don't know about the interference of man, in those systems. But there has been areas of where there's something called cloud seeding, and those things are done in certain countries where you have silver iodine being dumped into a cloud to cause the cloud to rain out, because you're trying to avoid any precipitation or any rainfall happening downstream. So that is where there's some sort of an interference in clouds, in terms of rainfall, in terms of causing the cloud to dry out, so that you will not have precipitation downstream. But in terms of interference with tropical cyclone is a tropical cyclone or hurricane is a very large and powerful system, and then interference with those kind of systems, I don't know, it might end up being detrimental, somehow, but I cannot see that there is interference in terms of man interfering with those systems or causing those systems or whatever it is, but I can say that it's a natural phenomenon, as far as my knowledge and understanding goes.
Yeah. Also, he spoke about the situation where people in low-lying areas, when instructions are given, some of them are reluctant. Of course, there's no law, and probably government we will want to look into that, whereby when instructions are given, yes.
That goes back to what I said earlier, because sometimes we give the information to you and then you don't respond to the information.
Yes.
Because that is where the cycle is completed. Where you have response, I will tell you, well, there's a storm approaching, and then you're supposed to move, then you move, then that's the cycle. Or you go to a shelter. But if I tell you that the storm is approaching and you refuse to move, then the cycle is not completed. And then something happens, then what happens then?
And then people go, they blame this, they blame that. But again, because man being so stubborn, they will tell you, oh, I feel safe at my home. And at the 99th hour, they call the fire officials, they call the police.
Exactly.
Who also have, and they put them at risk.
Yeah.
So again, maybe government needs to look at its legislation to probably legislate, when it comes to evacuation, mandatory evacuation by law. This is something probably that government will need to look at to ensure that when the instructions are given, that persons adhere to those evacuation orders and do not stay there because, of course, they are putting themselves, their families, their country, they're also putting the country at risk, and the fire officials, the police. So this is something, again, that government will probably need to look at to deal with that matter.
Well, over the years, I think the Met Office has developed a lot since after Hurricane Maria in 2017, because we have secured a climate resilient building.
Yes.
And we have our weather broadcast studio, which is now operational, and we have a number of instruments around the island, and this is helping with our forecasting and our real-time information gathering. So I must say, hats off to the instrument team, which maintains those weather stations by going out to them, on a almost daily basis to look at the stations and to make sure that they're in proper working order, and we feel secure, working in a climate resilient building in Jimit, where we'll be safe enough to feel comfortable to work overnight, when there's the onset of a tropical cyclone or hurricane or storm, to provide information to the public.
And if memory serves me right, just recently we had a tour of that building, and I think from what I gathered from the minister and the PS, that Dominica is the first country with such a building and a building of that magnitude with the equipment. I was surprised when I saw the studio in there. Yeah. So you guys have a state-of-the-art building to do the work for the country.
Yes, definitely we have come a long way, I must say, over the years, and since after Hurricane Maria.
Indeed. And yes, again, just to remind you, because I also need to remind you of our public speaking competition in disaster risk management, Voices of Resilience, Monday, November 17th, 2025. We have just about 7 minutes left on our program. What else you want to add, Marshall?
I just want to say that while there have been no major landfall or impacts or direct impacts, and there have been fewer systems than expected, the season is not yet over, and it's officially over on the 30th of November, and the environment remains conducive for tropical cyclone development, and that is warm ocean waters, and that is favorable winds, which is reduced wind shear or less wind shear. So we must remain vigilant through November as well, especially for late forming systems, or tropical waves or troughs, so the indirect threat remains real. We have rainfall expectation, we have landslides, we have sea conditions to look out for, and even though we have a storm passing some miles away from us, the first impact we will have is from the sea. So fisher folks have to be mindful of that. And preparedness remains critical, as I mentioned earlier. And the season is not over, and even storms that pass offshore can pose serious secondary impacts to us in Dominica. So community-wide readiness is essential, and response remains the best defense.
What I ask myself sometimes, why are fisher folks sometimes so stubborn? Yeah, because you go to them and you give them the necessary information. I remember going to the market and the guy asked me, who's going to pay for the crane so he can remove his boat? Who's going to pay for that? We're giving him information, asking him to protect his boat, and he's asking who's going to pay for him to remove his boat from the sea and to bring it back onto the sea. I said to him, well, it's your choice. If you want to have your boat destroyed, then that is you. But the information is out there so you can save your property, you can save your livelihood. If you refuse to take the action that we give to you, then that is your choice. However, you cannot say that we are not providing you with the necessary information on a timely manner to take the necessary action to provide, to save yourself, to save your property.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know, sometimes the fisher folks think like you have to go out to earn a living, but there's a balance. You need to be alive tomorrow to be able to go out, so you cannot risk your life going out just because you have to provide for your family. Just maybe for one day you might not be able to go to fish for one day, or probably 2 days, and next thing you might go out and something happens, so what happens then? So you have to consider your life first. So your first priority should be saving your life, and then you'll be alive to do other things.
Folks, remember we are still in the hurricane season and preparedness is key. And we also keep asking, are you ready? When a hurricane watch is issued, you have 2 days which is 48 hours before strong winds, rains and rough seas are possible. Prepare. If you are under a hurricane warning, you have a day and a half, that is 36 hours or less, before strong winds, rains and strong seas begin. Take action. And of course, we also have the do's and the don'ts. What not to do. Do not wait to hear the category of the hurricane to prepare. Hurricane strength can move from category 1 to 5, right, Marshall?
That's
right. As we've seen already in a short space of time. Do not wait until strong winds, rains, and rough seas begin to evacuate your family. Do not mislead the public, and we've been saying that over and over again. Do not mislead the public or place additional burden on national authorities by sharing fake news. Marshall spoke about that. What you should do: practice early preparation to help reduce your anxiety. Evacuate early if told to do so. And again, get your information from the trusted authorities. And the trusted authorities are, Marshall?
Dominican Meteorological Service, and we have a website, www.weather.gov.dm, and we also provide information on Facebook, on our WhatsApp channel, and also on Instagram, and we also provide the weather report, which is done on DBS Radio, and that is done after the morning news and at 1:10 p.m. on DBS Radio. So you make weather information a part of your daily life. Listen to the weather report after the morning news and at 1:10 p.m. on DBS Radio.
That is a free advertising. And of course, the Office of Disaster Management continues to inform and educate the populace. This area has seen significant improvements. We've had community engagement, road shows, outreach programs, our radio shows, our social media platforms, all informing and educating the public. The intention is to increase capacity and enhance products. The area that needs improving is testing, simulation exercises. Of course, the cost of staging an exercise is exorbitant, but the intention is to have it at the tabletop level, desktop review, and then accelerate to full scale. And of course, the collaboration and support of partners is critical. The Office of Disaster Management has been introducing these partners on the Disaster New Radio program so that you can elaborate on the area of expertise and how they support, contribute, and add value to disaster risk reduction initiatives and programming on island to save lives and reduce damage to property, ensuring a more resilient Dominica. Marshall, we have to wrap up.
Well, in closing, I just want to encourage the staff of the Met Service to continue the good work that you have been doing, continue to put in your all, and continue to provide information to the public, and also to say thank you for the support of the Minister of National Security and to the Permanent Secretary, and I look forward to your continued support in the future, and just to advise the Dominican public as well as the outside, to continue to listen to the weather report and continue to monitor information from the Met Service, and to also respond to the information, which is very critical.
And of course, we are still in the hurricane season.
Definitely, we are still in the hurricane season, and regardless, we could have impacts even outside of hurricane season as well. So be prepared and remain prepared.
Thank you very much, Senior Met Officer Marshall Alexander, for joining us today on yet another interesting program, Disaster and You, a program of the Office of Disaster Management. We hope that you enjoyed our program. We look forward to you, as usual, joining us every Tuesdays from 9:30 to 10:30 right here on DBS Radio. It has always been a pleasure and a joy for me as communications officer to be your host on this program, and we look forward to you joining us next week Tuesday for yet another interesting and informative program. Until then, I'm Carlisle JnoBaptiste, Disaster Preparedness Office and Communications Officer, saying thank you very much. See you next time.
I begging you live a prepared Dominican lifestyle for man, woman and child. I begging you live a prepared Dominican lifestyle for man, woman and child. For when disaster strikes, yeah. For when disaster strikes, oh, yeah. I beg you